Move on to Brilyn. Been wanting to cover this for a long time. It's I don't know. It's like I said, it's like an anthropological experiment. And I don't want to make too much light of it because it is in the absence, obviously, of Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated. And within that, though, what kind of immediately became a fight within the conservative movement is like, who's going to lead Turning Point? And I don't think it really meant Turning Point USA itself, the organization, because Erica Kirk, his wife, has now officially taken over that. But who will serve as a youth coalitional manager? And that is something that I think in retrospect was so extraordinary about him, is that he genuinely was a bridge between Tucker Carlson and Mark Levin. There's nobody else really who was able to do that, and who was genuinely popular with a lot of young people, had a youth organization. He had, $100 million or so at his disposal. It was a genuinely extraordinary thing where he could maintain connections with everybody in his institutional right, wield power at the White House level, take calls from J.D. Vance, and then also appear on college campus tours and get 1,200 people or whatever to show up. So afterwards, part of what has ignited this great influencer war of Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro and Matt Wall, all these other folks, is that it's trying to, quote, control for his legacy. And really what that means, I think, is like, who speaks for the conservative youth, if they exist at all? And there was quite a bit of speculation that what eventually would come would be some sort of apparatus which was not nearly as tolerant of the Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens, who are much more skeptical of Israel. Part of the reason why I think that's very silly is that it's not just about them personally, it's a genuine view, which is exploding in the Republican Party.
Yeah.
Weren't you? Okay,
especially among young people.
You were looking at some New York Times poll. I'm sure they'll cover it tomorrow.
Yeah.
But what was the Republican numbers in there? I'm sure it wasn't nearly what the boomer Republican, the youth Republican numbers in there. The net positive support for Israel has to be just devastating, for the pro-Israel.
I don't remember off the top of my head. I have to look.
Okay.
But it has shifted significantly, but Republicans overall are still quite pro-Israel.
Yeah.
And they, of all the groups, of all the partisan groups, independents, Democrats, and Republicans, they had actually shifted the least in terms of Israel. However, when you're talking about, because the thing that Charlie Kirk pulled off was both making boomers in the Republican Party feel like Republicans were reaching out to young people, and to some extent actually reaching out to young people. Now, people did polls, he was actually not very popular among young audiences, but I think among young conservatives, he was genuinely very popular. Yeah. Whereas there are, other figures in the Republican movement who, happen to be young and claim to speak to a young audience, but in reality, they're just making boomers feel like Republicans have a young coalition. 100%. And so that's one of the open questions is, first of all, I think even the question of is someone going to step into his shoes is a little bit of a flawed premise. But is there going to be someone who can pull off both doing the boomer performance and the donor performance and have some credibility that they're truly have a young base that they're bringing to the table as well? And a key part of that question is going to be around where are they on Israel?
It's going to be on Israel. It's also going to be on the economic question. I will get to that here in a little bit. But all of that is a lead up to this new gentleman who has emerged, Brilyn Holland, who very recently went viral for trying to, quote, step into Turning Point USA and their shoes of a college campus tour. He filmed this video on board of a private jet. Here's what he had to say.
What's up, America? Brylin Hollyhand here, about 30,000 feet up. We are on the way to Arkansas. So everybody in line at the University of Arkansas to kick off my 10-stop campus tour. We are coming to you right here, right now. Stay in line. We have gotten a third room because we have sold out this campus stop 3 times. But we are coming to you. We will fit you in. Students will get priority, but we will make it happen. I cannot be more excited. We are back. We are on the road. We're coming to you one conversation at a time. If you're not at the University of Arkansas, we're coming to a campus near you soon. So check out my tour dates. We'll see you super soon.
Okay. So who is this guy? I mean, look, I'm pretty online in these circles.
Yeah.
I'd never heard of him. He actually follows me. So kind
me
of
too. Well, and I a couple notes, especially for people who are just listening. On the private jet in the Masters Golf polo.
Classic.
Sporting the Rolex.
Yep.
So giving man of the people vibes out of the gates.
I'm from College Station, Texas. I see these guys coming from a mile away. If you ever have been in an SEC type environment.
Oh, well, you were like a debate club guy too, so
well,
yeah.
but this is more of like a college frat Southern, like an explicit individual and character, a guy, if you will.
Yeah.
That if you've ever, I mean, you went to UVA, you know.
Oh yeah, we had the time.
We had plenty of Brylyns over in Virginia at the UVA campus. So my point, and look, not to stereotype too much, but it's like a little bit too perfect to see that. The private jet is what really makes the entire thing. But the point, I think, around by the way, I mispronounced his name, it's Hollyhand, I apologize, is just like, who is this guy? What are the type of politics that we're going to see here? And what people immediately started pointing to is not to say he was an op per se, but it's part of an example of what some sort of future Republican-style influencer trying to speak to the youth may look like. And in particular, they pointed here to an interview that he gave on Fox News hours after Trump announced the death of Charlie Kirk. Here's what he had to say.
This is heartbreaking, Will. And I really hope, if anything, that people get off the sidelines. This weekend, I'm going to a youth rally in South Carolina. And you better believe that I've already had my team shoot me text saying, Brilyn, you really need to caution this. You really need to think about not standing in the middle of a park and speak to the next generation. But I am more energized than ever to carry on this torch, to carry on this legacy, because that's what Charlie would have wanted. He would have wanted us to continue to fight the good fight, just like he did.
So that's what we saw here. He said, immediately, I'm willing to carry on his legacy. What is kind of interesting is that apparently there has been some controversy over his own role with Turning Point USA. Turning Point USA figures themselves say, hey, actually, we had some serious fights over the leadership of Ronna McDaniel specifically over at the RNC. Hollyhand has apparently been very pro-Israel, and so that's, of course, what a lot of the influencer types who were involved in the war are pointing to. What I kind of saw was what I saw there, and I was saying this when we were preparing for our segment, is I genuinely see this as just a complete reversion to the mean of traditional GOP politics. And that's kind of what I'm curious about for what it means in the absence of Charlie's death. Because what Charlie, again, was so effective at is he would take online energy and he would try to channel it into the traditional Republican apparatus. Israel, perfect example. He will have somebody on and he'll say things like, I'm not allowed to criticize the Israeli government more than Israelis are, right?
Yeah.
Which sounds like vaguely, I don't know, like vaguely independent, I guess you would say, not as controlled. At the same time, there's just been this infamous letter talked about, released by, or at least purportedly sent by Charlie Kirk to Bibi Netanyahu. It's extremely pro-Israel. And he also, if you really listen to him, he was always very pro-Israel. Yeah. He was a little,
he's like, let me help you get a network of influencers to carry the pro-Israel message.
There you go. At the same time, he did that focus group, right? Where a lot of his own younger TPUSA members were like, yeah, I'm not really down with, U.S. support for Israel. He was grappling with it because it was a genuine coalitional fight. Whereas a lot of these other people like Ben Shapiro, Hollyhand, and others are explicitly much more pro, and I think that's why Candace Owens and many of the others are fighting with them over that legacy, is because that would mean that even entertaining that faction of the coalition comes completely out of the window, and that's what most of the fights are about. And so with this guy in particular, there's a lot of question about how does this stuff even come to be, and what I think is fascinating here, and this genuinely does raise the question of like, how do you even put yourself in that position of immediately being like, I'm going to carry on his legacy, which Megyn Kelly did, Tucker Carlson, many of these other people say they'll be included, but this person who purportedly was not even having a good relationship with TPUSA, it's like, is this some sort of pushed thing? Like, for example, you can put this up here on the screen, an image which went very viral after Mr. Hollyhand himself, came to the center of attention. Look at this, interest over time. Effectively nothing up until very recently for its supposed campus tour, etc. So again, I don't know what all of this speaks to, but anthropologically, like for the conservative movement, first it shows how unique Charlie Kirk actually was in terms of his job and frankly just being so good at what he did. But it also just demonstrates like this influencer who is going to be going on campus and in which direction that youth conservative energy is going to go. Charlie was a person who could channel the Shane Gillis beer drinking watcher into an actual apparatus of like serious politics. Can Ben Shapiro and these guys do the same? I'm skeptical.
Well,
personally.
there also just was this sense of like, what did they like just turn these guys out in a factory and just like, oh, here's the next one. Here you go. He's going on the campus tour. He's doing the thing. I mean, there was an ick factor of like, an hour after Charlie's day, he's on Fox News smiling, like, I'm going to carry the torch. Who are you? Like, who are you? What are we talking about here? And then he's on his private jet. He's flying around and doing a campus tour. He was claiming that he was my understanding is he was claiming there's some affiliation with TPUSA that they had to come out and say there's no affiliation here. So it felt very... it just felt very forced. It felt like it came out of nowhere. No one had ever heard of this dude. Now he's posted like, oh, here I am with Charlie. Here's some text messages with Charlie. Like, I didn't just come out of nowhere. I've been around. I've been doing this thing, et cetera, et cetera. But, you know, it felt like there were powers that be that just were like, okay, we've got the next one ready to go and we're slotting him into place and he's going on the campus tour and doing the thing. And it was like, where did this guy come from and why are you so keen on this guy being the guy? I think that was my sense as not being on the right of some of the reaction to him. And certainly the Israel piece is tied up in that because, again, Charlie Kirk was extremely pro-Israel. You read that letter to Netanyahu, who's like, let me help you like propagandize. Let's do this thing together, warning him that you've got a little bit of an issue here. Like, I'm seeing it. But ultimately, I'm going to be on your side. We're going to do this propaganda thing together, et cetera. But there was a sense that maybe Charlie was a little bit up for grab, that he wasn't just going to be complete and totally, endlessly lockstep.
Yes.
In the place where that was most notable was his criticism in advance of the Iran strike, of a potential Iran strike. Yep. And, you know, that he was very vocal. I actually watched some of his coverage after the Iran strike happened. And to be honest, it was extremely tortured. He did not know what to say in that moment because
I mean, you guys want the story? Like, I've told it to you before. Here's what happened, and this has all been reported, so I can just say it. JD and the White House called him and told him to shut up, and they were like, "Hey, dude, it's happening, so nuke it."
Yeah.
And from this point forward, you need to zip it because you know that's how it goes here. Charlie allegedly went to the White House and basically asked Trump not to do it, and Trump quote barked at him like a dog, and that's not just from Gray Zone. I've heard that too. My point, just around all of this, is that. Clearly what happened is he was upset. And that was, I think it was not just personal. At the end of the day, he had insight into power. He could also see what was happening with Trump and the people who were influencing him. Those were not Charlie Kirk people. Charlie, to his great credit, actually was deeply skeptical of a lot of the war machine, and particularly a lot of these neocons. He had a lot of beef with Lindsey Graham and a lot of these other folks, and he was afraid at the rising power levels in the White House. And so, as you said, it was tortured because that's why what did they all land on? Remember, it was like, you got to trust the president. He has the best. It's like, oh my God.
Exactly.
Such
and
nonsense.
He was, you know, taking like some comments from his audience that were all basically like, what the fuck, you know? And he's having, well, you've got a good point there. Like, I understand where you're coming from, but at the end of the day, I don't know, what do you think? And he'd like toss to whoever he had in there with him. So you could see he understood that there was a big divide on Israel and ancillary issues, including Iran, between the people he was supposed to be in touch with and the direction the Trump administration was going. And that was playing out in these public ways. And the Brilyn Hollyhand phenomenon feels like, any of that reticence, we're just going to sweep that away. And we're going to get the guy in the seat who's just going to be like, go Netanyahu, love the genocide, please bomb Iran, Mr. President, and have zero reticence about it. And I do think there's another piece here just on like maturity. We've seen a number of these young, either Democratic or Republican aligned influencers who come out of the gates and they get propped up by the parties because they're just willing to do the talking points. And Charlie was that guy. Like, that's how he...
Oh, it used to be.
That's how he becomes this, this person that we all know, is because he's just out there relentlessly hammering like the Republican Party Trump talking points. Well, when he died, he's 31 years old. Like, this is now a man with a family and kids. And at some point, maybe you don't want to just be that, like, what are my talking points? And let me just totally recite them verbatim. Like, that gets old and boring. And at some point, you start to go, who was it that said that he was less interested and he was sort of bored with politics. Like I kind of took that one of his friends, I think, said that he was kind of bored with politics.
I don't know about that. I think he was more with the type of politics that you're talking about.
Yeah, but that's what I took from that is that he was sort of chafing at this very confined role that had been sketched out for him of just you're going to toe the line and that's really all we want.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he was not. He certainly. I mean, look, he was in a difficult position. He was a coalitional operator. He was both a politician and a media star, which is, in my opinion, doesn't really mix all that well. And that's part of why, you know, the Iran thing, you have to be tortured a little bit, but even whenever you have a genuinely held belief, that's part of the issue with trying to be both. But with these guys, they don't even pretend. I also, you know, I was trying not to say it was an op, but it is crazy. How does a 19-year-old get to fly on a private jet? Like, how does that even happen?
Well, isn't this, I assume, family wealth?
People said that. I didn't know if it was actually true. He's 19 years old. He's flying on a private jet? What? It's like, where does this shit even come from? How do you even get booked on Fox News? How did that happen? It's like this show or, again, I never heard of this. Now, maybe that's my fault. There are a lot of people I've never heard of, but I'm pretty tapped into this.
I mean, that internet graph over time kind of proves that there wasn't a lot there before the present moment.
I'm just like, okay. I mean, it is weird, you know, to go on Ben Shapiro and all this and to be held up as this new star for everything. That's my only part where I'm like, man, that really does feel like kind of a donor push in some ways. And I wouldn't put it past them either.
He's got like a conservative Pete Buttigieg vibe to him.
Yeah, that's a good call.
Sort of like you came out of the womb with your little briefcase, like, you know, excited to go to the RNC or whatever. Like, that's the vibe. And it's very, I remember Steve Bannon said something like that about Marco Rubio once. He was like, he came out with his briefcase and his blow-dried hair, like going to work at the RNC. And it was, and it nails, it really captures this certain type that people just have an ick factor with.
Yes, that's
because if you've been wearing this naked political ambition since you were like 8 years old, it just is like, oh, I don't know. I think there's something, you need something else in your life.
Yeah, it's embarrassing.
It feels gross. It feels very strange to have someone who's been looking at themselves in the mirror since they could remember and thinking like, that's the next senator or whatever. And he definitely has that energy.
Yeah, I think you are correct on that. So anyways, that's a long way of saying, who is this guy? Where did he come from? What does it mean? I'm not exactly sure, but I guess it is interesting. Thank you guys so much for watching. We appreciate it. Emily and Ryan on tomorrow, so they'll see you then. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show, ad-free, and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.